Hi, I'm Mackenzie.
Hey, I'm Denise, and welcome to the podcast From Rundown to Renewed.
We're excited through the months of July and August, where we are really going to be focusing on the fruit of the Spirit. And you can find that in Galatians 5:22. And it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness." So we're just going to dive into each one of these throughout July and August. And we have a book that we're kind of going to use as conversation builders
Mhm.
throughout these months, and it's called Fruitful Women of God.
The
And
Bible.
oh, Fruitful Women of the Bible. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we're going to be going through this with some of her points and use those throughout the month. So, our first one we're going to talk about today is all about love.
Yes. So we are talking this type of love and the fruit of the Spirit is agape love, right? So it's putting your desires to the side in order to better serve the needs of someone else. It's like a self-sacrificing type of love. And before we jump into anything that we're going to share today about agape love, fruit of the Spirit, just wanted to give a disclaimer that this does not apply in situations of abuse.
Mm,
So, if
yeah.
you yourself are in an abusive situation, or if you are witnessing abuse in a friend's life or family life, whatever the case might be, this does not apply.
Yeah. So with this love, what it really does is it prompts people to act on it and to go out and show love to other people.
Right.
Right. So in forms of abuse, that is not happening.
No.
So we just want to be clear that you cannot sacrifice yourself anymore in an abusive situation to make it better. There's no way you can become
Mhm.
like more Christian like or just
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yes.
So
Correct.
that's just really important because sacrifice requires service, right? And so we're serving out of our hearts
Right.
for the Lord with this love
Mhm.
in hopes that that goes, it has a ripple effect on people, that everyone just continues to show love as they are shown love.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's not something that's out of obligation.
Mm,
It's out of it's just like this overflow
mhm.
coming out from you,
Yeah.
right? From what God is giving you, from His love, it just pours out from you into others, and that ripple effect just continues on and on. So, in this book that we're reading, the first example of this, she gives different biblical characters. So we both, when we were talking about this just recently, when we read the first name, we were both like, "Who is this?" Like we could not remember. And then once we were introduced to her, we were, "Oh yeah, that's right."
Yeah.
But it's Jochebed.
Mhm.
And if you don't know who that is, you're in good company because we forgot too. But it's Moses's mother,
Mhm.
right? And so whenever I know for me, I love the Israelite story. It's one that God has so like graciously taught me so much through in just different seasons of my life. I find myself always coming back to it. So when I think about Moses, that's what I think about. I think about the miracles. I think about leading the Israelites out of Egypt and, all of the things that conspire from that. I don't think about the fact that his mother had to give him up.
Yeah.
None of those things were to happen if she would have clung to him. Now, so we have some history here, so
Mhm.
bear with us, yeah. But Pharaoh ordered all Hebrew baby boys to be murdered because he viewed them as a threat. Now, what I love about this, not that part, but the next part is that the midwives disobeyed. Yeah, like girl power. Come on. Like that's just, I love that so much.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Pharaoh finds this out.
Because Pharaoh had told the midwives, if a Hebrew woman has a male, kill it.
Oh, that's right. Correct.
But if
Sorry.
it was a female, let them live.
Right. So it's just the male babies,
Mhm.
not the female babies. So he orders this. The midwives disobey. Pharaoh finds out. And so then he orders all his people to throw the boy babies into the Nile River.
Yeah. And that's so extreme. Like he went from just two midwives that were delivering all these Hebrew babies to all of his people. Everyone now has the power to kill boys.
It's disturbing.
Yeah.
It's really disturbing.
Yeah, and I think that when we think about Jochebed, like, so she gave birth to Moses and she kept him a secret for 3 months.
Right.
And I don't know about you guys, but like a newborn is not quiet. So once that 3-month mark hit, she was like, okay, I can't hide him anymore.
Right.
And so she was like, what am I going to do? So she created this basket and put him in the basket and then put him in the Nile River, not knowing
Yeah.
what the
No
outcome
idea.
would be at
Mm-mm.
all, but showing that self-sacrifice love of her entire family could be murdered
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
this baby would die, or she could trust God and put him in this basket and trust what would happen with him.
And that's, oh my gosh, that I, as a mom, like my stomach hurts thinking about having to do that with
Yeah.
like my kids back when they were, I mean, at any age, but
Yeah.
especially when they're this helpless little baby that needs you constantly.
Yeah.
But this is where the agape love comes in.
Mm,
And when we were kind of talking through this, it's like, well, that required an intense amount of trust
yeah.
in God for her to do such a thing. It's like, okay, I know that if I keep him, this is going to get dangerous for everyone involved. So I'm going to trust that this sacrifice that I am making here, God will, he'll protect, he'll
Right.
do whatever she was thinking in that moment. It required an incredible amount of trust.
Yeah. So Moses had this older sister, Miriam, who stayed along the river and watched him as he floated away to make
Mhm.
sure he was safe. And Pharaoh's daughter sees Moses in this basket and like sees this baby, has pity, falls in love because how could you not? And decides to save him. And Miriam was watching all of this. So she runs up to Pharaoh's daughter and is like, do you want me to go find someone that can nurse him for you?
So smart.
And she's like, yeah. And goes and gets her mom. So now her mom gets to nurse her own baby and
Mm,
was also paid for it. Like something that she
that's
would have
awesome.
done
For free.
for free,
Yeah.
but was paid wages to raise her son and nurse him.
All the stay-at-home moms listening right now are like, where's my paycheck for nursing my kid?
Yeah, it is a lofty duty.
Yes, it is. But so worth it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love that part because again, that trust and because
Mhm.
she sacrificed and she trusted, God gave it back. God gave Moses back
Yeah.
to her.
Right.
Such a gift,
Mhm.
right? What's incredible to me about this story, and these are these little details that you learn, is she never named Moses.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's another act of
Yeah.
love and trust and faith because she never really claimed him
Right.
as hers. Moses was always, it's just, again, it's the self sacrifice of whoever this baby is, it's much bigger than me. And so I'm not going to hold so tight to it, which we're all really good at that, you know. Um, I'm not going to hold so tight to this that God can't use it because I'm going to get in the way. She doesn't do that.
Yeah.
She doesn't even name him. She recognizes that this is so much bigger than her.
Yeah. And then in those days, there's another verse in the Bible that shows us that nursing lasted for 3 years.
Mhm.
And when they were done nursing and they weaned, there would be a big feast. So she was able to pour into Moses for those 3 years
Mhm.
without him having a name still at this point.
What do you do? Side note, what do you like when he's misbehaving, being a 2-year-old toddler? How do you yell at him? Like how do you like
Yeah.
how do you get his attention? What do you do?
Boy.
Yeah, child.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he
Sorry,
still
just
didn't have a name, still nursing. And she probably didn't get to have that feast,
yeah,
that
celebration.
celebration, because she was giving him back to Pharaoh's daughter.
And that's giving up. I mean, as moms, it's not you don't do the things that you do for your kids for recognition,
Right.
but it is nice,
Yeah.
every so often. I mean, I love when my kids are it's such a gift when your kid comes up to you and just like hugs you and thanks you for something
Yeah.
totally unexpected, and it's again, you don't do it for that, but it's nice so to even lose that recognition because no one even knows that she's his actual biological mom
Yeah.
in that
And I
moment.
think that, like, for us personally, how would we show up different in parenting or just showing up for other people in general
Mm.
if we acted like we only have this much time and then they're
Oh
going to
my
be taken
gosh.
away? How much more intentional would we be?
Mm.
Because I think she was probably very intentional with her time because she
She
knew.
knew. She knew it was yeah, that I like want to cry thinking about that. Like that's really and yeah, with your kids, with other people, we think that we have just this abundance of time and that's not I think we let things slip through the cracks because of that thought pattern.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on ourselves or anyone else. I think it's just a human part of life, but how much more intentional could you be if you just yeah, you let that go and you just
Yeah.
recognize that time is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so with Jochebed doing all of these things and trusting God and everything, like we know the story of Moses and what it led to,
Yeah.
and it led to completely freeing the Israelites. So had she not been obedient in all of these things,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
it's just so cool.
Well, and it's one of those things where cuz when I was kind of thinking through this when we were planning it, I thought, well, God probably like he's God, so he could have done it either way, with or without her sacrifice. But on when you look back on the story, we're still talking about this all these years
Yeah.
later and we're talking about her sacrifice. And even though she's like a quote unquote minor character, her sacrifice led to
Mhm. Yep.
this incredible freeing experience for
Yeah.
the Israelites. And that's what we talk about. But that, but like her sacrifice over here is what and helped lead to that.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible. That's a
Hmm.
beautiful example and such an example of, the things that we do in love, where we're self-sacrificing our love, where we're pouring out love to other people and serving them, that ripple effect that we brought up earlier, when we
Yeah.
were kind of introducing everything. You have no idea. I mean, even when we're gone, the,
Right.
the amount of that ripple that's powerful,
Yeah.
that ripple effect can have that you will never see.
Hmm.
But it's because of what you chose to do and how you chose to live out in love, how that plays out for other people later on.
Yeah. And, I think about another woman in the Bible and stick with us on this one
Yeah, hang
because
in because we were a little unsure when we read this too, but it's really good.
it's good. So, in Luke 10, you'll hear about the story of Mary and Martha.
Mhm.
Jesus passes through with all of his disciples. Mary is a thinker. She wants to sit at Jesus's feet and listen to
Mhm.
him.
Mhm.
And Martha, this is her home. She's preparing everything for these 13 men that she doesn't typically have
And
there.
that's a lot of work.
That is a lot of
Mhm.
work.
Yes.
And like making sure they are feeling welcome and comforted and everything like that.
Sure.
So
Mhm.
um, we know that Martha was busy doing all the work, and
Mhm.
Mary was sitting at Jesus's feet.
Right. And so this is where, this is the part of the story that always gets focused on, right? When Jesus comes to Martha and says, that Mary has chosen the best thing. I'm totally paraphrasing. Don't like don't come at me with biblical references because I know I'm paraphrasing on that. But he basically tells, Martha that Mary has chosen, and I'm not gonna take this from her. Martha's so upset. She's like, no one's helping me, this. And Jesus in love, in this constructive criticism way, gives this to her.
Yeah.
He's telling her that Mary chose what's best,
Mm.
and it won't be taken from her. And I love that that's the example that he gives, because it's like we sometimes have to say hard things in love to people.
Right.
And sometimes we have to hear hard things in love from other people. And Jesus models that for us. It's he loves both Mary and Martha. He's just lovingly telling Martha, Mary's chosen what's best.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take it from her. I'm not going to make her get up, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, and I think with all of us, we're all very individual and unique, right? So we all
Sure.
show sacrificial love in
Sure.
different ways. So if you want to spin it a little bit with Martha, she was showing sacrificial love
Hmm. Yeah.
through her through not having that personal time with the Lord and sitting at his feet to be able to serve and
Right.
create a welcoming and comforting environment,
Hmm.
right?
Right. Yeah. And I think, I mean, for me, I love to have people over. I love to host. So, and that is what you do as a
Yeah,
host. And this is her home.
right.
So there's something to be said about making sure that all of these guests that are coming in, you want to make sure they're comfortable. You want to make sure they're fed. You want to do all of these things. And so what's interesting is, you know, this happens this in Martha's home, and then later on in John 11 is when we find out that Lazarus, their brother, Mary and Martha's brother, has died. And Jesus is not near them. He's a couple days away. So, but he gets the news, and he and the disciples come back, and Martha greets Jesus. Like, she goes to Jesus. And so she's showing this love to him in a new way. She's not staying at home, making sure everything's ready. She goes to Jesus. And not only does she go to him, but she professes her faith in him.
Yeah.
And to me, it's it's interesting how Jesus gives this loving, constructive criticism to her. And then, however much time has passed between then and Lazarus's death, there's clearly some heart things going on
Yeah.
with Martha, because she goes up to Jesus, she professes her faith in him, and she knows that he's going to take care of things. And she doesn't realize that he's going to raise Lazarus from the dead. That's just an amazing perk that comes later. But she knows that he will comfort and that her brother will be resurrected eventually. And Jesus is like, actually, it's gonna happen today. Surprise. which
Yeah.
which is amazing. Yeah.
And we read before this that um, all Mary and Martha were single women. So that meant that they were young.
They were either, it's one of two things, right? Which we don't know.
Yeah.
They were either teenagers,
Yeah.
or they were
Outcasts.
like outcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people in that time frame, women were married by the time they were 20 at the latest.
Yeah. So that's just interesting of thinking, Jesus calmly tells Martha, this won't be taken from Mary.
Right.
And then we see her later in the story of how she's changed and everything. So
Yeah.
it's just, that's really cool to see and how that happens so quickly. Like we don't know the timing of this, but we know that Jesus's mission was for like 3 years.
Right.
So within the 3 year time limit, Martha shows,
This like change of heart,
yeah,
this desire. And it's like she's willing to offer sacrificial love in both.
right.
It's like, okay, well, maybe Jesus has a point here. Maybe I'm too focused.
Hmm.
And we don't know the thoughts that she had, but there
Right.
is something to be said about, you know, focusing on all the things that need done versus focusing on the people.
Yeah. So I think that we can all afford to have a more servant heart like Martha,
Mhm.
but we just need to remember who we're actually serving because there's so much in this world that we can get tied up in and what other people think and like it's just wild in our image that we try to keep
Yeah.
and our performance
Hmm.
and Jesus isn't interested in our perfection.
Hmm.
He's interested in our souls. And love doesn't actually exist when we're performing for other people and trying to make everything perfect.
Hmm.
That is not agape self sacrificial love.
Mm-mm. Well, it's more about your image.
Right.
It's more about, so it's a performance. So you are genuinely, whether you recognize it or not, you are constantly thinking about yourself.
Mm.
And you're constantly thinking about, well, what's so like, it's not about serving, it's
Right.
about what are people going to think?
Hmm.
What are people going to do?
Yeah.
How should I portray myself? What does this look like? We really we put our worth
Mm.
and our reputation in our image and what our lives look like and what our homes look
Yeah.
like. I mean, it it goes so deep.
Can I go off on a little rampage here?
No, yes, please.
When I think about this, I think about people's landscaping that they
Here,
have
yeah.
all over their house. And one, it's a total waste of time, I believe. These are just my personal opinions, okay? Um, I actually researched because it was taking my husband like 4 hours to mow our grass at one point, and that's a lot of time, especially in the summer when you have to be doing it every week.
Right.
And so I looked up, why do we have grass in our yards? Like, why aren't we ripping these things up and having gardens
I
and
love that
feeding
you
our
looked this
families?
up.
And so I looked it up, and the reason we all have grass is because it was an image of wealth.
When was this? Like, when was do we know a timeline? I'm just so
I
curious.
can look it up,
Yeah.
but it was just, I was just like, that explains it. It was all for this. And we're still doing it centuries later, having grass in our yards.
Well, and when I moved into my old neighborhood, it was new construction and like I had to plant grass. Mackenzie's looking up.
I am looking it up.
So, but there were so many lawn service places that came to my door within a week of me moving there. It was insane. But uh yeah, it was there were a lot of weeds. There were a lot of it, like without the lawn service, the grass really didn't look super great. And when you would walk around, you could tell who had who had lawn care and who did not. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
So,
And that's just, our image, and
mhm,
it's so silly. I
it's
told you it would be a rampage.
it's grass. Like I mean, are we gonna be able to find this? Why
Okay.
do we have green lawns? Why do we
I'm gonna keep looking it up, and I'll find the answer. But
All
is
right.
there anything else that you feel like we put our
Oh my
image
gosh.
and everything in?
Yeah. So we kind of talked about this a little bit. I could do a whole series on this. So I'll do my best to keep it tight.
Right.
But social media, we're always, and I'll even share. I try to keep as much as I can my social media very real. Because I just think that that's important. But it's all we're so good at putting, again, you're putting your best face forward. So you're putting the absolute highlights of your vacation on because we're in summer now, right? So guaranteed you've seen beach and Disney pictures already, right? Which is
Mhm.
great. I love the beach. I love Disney. And we went to the beach last year. I was at Disney this February. Like, it's great. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's wonderful. But I think what happens is we are seeing the highlight reels of people's lives and we're not seeing that, you know, well, they had a great day at the beach, but what you didn't see is that their kid got sunburned and they couldn't go out to eat because their kid's laying on a bed with aloe lathered all over
Yeah.
them and they can't move and they're crying a bunch, right? And granted, like I guess no one really wants to see, a kid sunburned and can't go out to, like, we want to see the good parts, but then that also brings about this comparison trap and then
Like a false
it's
reality.
such a
Yeah.
false reality. And so I think social media has gotten better at people being real. I think people have started to break down their own barriers within themselves to be real.
Mhm.
And I think there's a time and place for certain things to be shared. It's also not like a diary. You don't have to like
Right.
pour your deepest, darkest secrets. Like, I'm not saying swing that way either. There's extremes, right? Like, there's got to be a happy medium for
Yeah.
social media, whether you choose to use it or not. And I think we get so tied up in what other people have that we forget, like, it's so easy to see they had this beautiful vacation and I'm not going on vacation this summer, or I can't afford a vacation this summer, or
Right.
whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, so then that's what you're focused on. And
Right.
you're not focused on everything that you do have.
Yeah.
And then that just leads to more unhappiness and more trying to keep up with the Joneses and
Yeah.
all of this. I mean, it just cycles into each other.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, hello, that's a rundown state of mind for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I think, again, I could talk about this for hours and
Mhm.
hours. There's so much to it, but I think that's a big piece of keeping up with your own image and
Yeah.
keeping up with whoever else's image and who you think you should be like, or whatever you think you should have. And you're really not serving from a place of love
No.
in those moments
Mhm.
at all.
Yeah. So for those of you hanging at the edge of your seat for the history of grass
Yes, I
lawns,
need to know this.
um, it started in the 17th and 18th century,
Okay,
and it was in England and parts of Europe. So the people with the castles and everything
sure, makes sense.
would have the grass, which now is what all of us do because someone did it before us and no one's going to question
That's who you are, Mackenzie. You question
it.
all the things, which I think is really, I mean, it could go both ways, but I think it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, until my child does it with me for
Yeah,
everything,
that's
which happens. But
that's gonna happen. Yeah, for sure.
all right. So as we leave, I hope you learned something more besides my
Rants of
dissatisfaction
grass.
with grass lawns,
Hmm.
but that we need to be showing this self
Hmm.
sacrificing love to create that ripple effect.
Hmm.
So we have some reflecting questions that we will talk about over in our Facebook community page. The first one is, how has someone shown you agape love? The second is, where have you gotten caught up in perfectionism or comparison that has taken away from you showing love? And the third is, how can the love for others that you show have a ripple effect to inspire them to show love to others?
Yeah, that's good. And I think those are really good things to just think through.
Yeah.
I love that ripple effect,
Hmm.
and when you're thinking about loving on people and serving them, remember that it does have that.
Yeah,
Definitely
absolutely.
be encouraged by that.
Yeah. So if you are feeling run down,
There's space for you at our table.